Okay, listeners, you may have seen me talking about something pretty serious on my Instagram account, but if you didn't, and either the algorithm didn't send my IG stories your way, or you're not following me, I'm just going to give you the tea here. I experienced bank fraud pretty significantly at the end of January. One day, I woke up, checked my bank account, and noticed a huge, and I mean huge, fraudulent transaction from my business bank account. And once I thought I had gotten that all figured out with my bank, we had more fraud hit another business bank account. So, although I think I am honestly and generally a pretty resilient and tough person, this was one of those situations that just broke me. However, going through this sticky situation, I learned so much, including how important it is for your business and for legal purposes to have your assets and funds separate and to also do very specific things with your bank account. I also found out some really interesting insight about my bank account from my bank and the amount of wire fraud happening every single day in today's world, and then how they, as the bank, suggest to best prevent it and deal with it if it does happen. Now, after having a bit of time to process and some time passed now, I am ready to impart some of these lessons onto you and shed some light on how you can legally protect yourself, separate your accounts accordingly, keep your assets separate, and ultimately why I highly suggest moving your business into an LLC or C Corp if you are just a sole proprietor. And I'm getting into all of that in today's episode.
You're listening to the Legal Paige podcast, where we chat about life and business with a legal twist. I'm Paige, attorney and photographer helping online businesses and creatives tackle their business dreams without breaking out in hives. No more legal mumbo jumbo. This podcast features simple, bite-sized advice that'll have you legally legit in no time. Are you ready? Let's get started.
Okay, listeners, like I said in the intro, today I'm going to share more about what I experienced the last half of January, how I discovered fraudulent activity hitting my bank accounts, and what I learned from all of it. But first, let me remind you that I am an attorney, but it doesn't mean I am your attorney. So all legal information and legal chat I'm going to talk about in today's episode is intended for the masses and a large variety of different businesses. Please make sure you seek out your own attorney in your own state to represent you if you have specific advice regarding your unique business. Okay, just got to dish out a fun legal disclaimer to start out these episodes. So let's get down to business. I first just want to talk about fraud. So what is fraud? According to dictionary.com, fraud is deceit, trickery, sharp practice, or breach of confidence perpetrated for profit or to gain some unfair or dishonest advantage. Now, wire fraud is the use of electronic communication with the intent to commit financial fraud. This usually happens when a scammer kind of poses as someone that you would know or like a trusted source, like a company or a vendor that you work with, or say a family member or a friend, and requests an immediate wire transfer of funds, or they request information related to your bank account or your login to your account. And this wire fraudster then usually kind of plays up an urgent need for the funds, that there's an emergency, or they're going to say, like, you need to update your bank account here. Like, please click on this link. And they toy on your emotions to manipulate you into giving them something that would give them access to your bank account or access to your debit card that's linked to your bank account. Wire fraud is a federal crime. And the funny thing is I dealt with wire fraud cases, and they're more white collar crime cases, quite a bit when I worked as a federal clerk for a federal judge. I had this one case that I will never forget for the rest of my life that was like over 240 counts, and like half of them were wire fraud counts. So I know quite a bit about wire fraud. I know all the elements of wire fraud. And my point here is, I guess, why does this sticky situation matter to you as a business owner? Like, why am I telling all of you this? Because it can literally happen to anyone, including your friendly online attorney who's literally got most of her shiz together. And so I thought. So fraud can really look like so many different things, especially wire fraud. I have had messages from our community saying that, it's looked like a client inquiring about booking you and setting a date and then asking you to like pay the florist or planner, and then you're clicking links and then they like get your bank account information and then they pay themselves. It can also look like a fishy email from Instagram or a fishy text or DM from Instagram, only for you to click on the link and lose access to your account. Like, that's different from wire fraud, but it is just fraud in general. And it can also look like blatantly obvious scams that we can all think about, like, a scam phone call, and then they're asking you for all this information and you like know what's going down. Or it can look like one of those emails where it's not from a reputable email sender and you just know that it's probably scam and you're not going to click on anything. It can also look like your bank legitimately sending you a text message or calling you, or an insurance company, someone posing as an insurance company calling you. I had heard from someone that there's this big scam going out there from USAA, where USAA, if that's your insurer, is calling you on the phone, and then you pick up and then you see that it's a scam, you hang up, but then somehow they're hacked into your phone and they have all this information. Like, it's getting like really crazy out there, you guys. So for me though, let me tell you what fraud looked like. I had logged into my bank account, and this, I'm going to tell you a really big tip of mine, but for just automated and convenience purposes, I use the same credit union in my hometown for all of my banking. I probably have like a ridiculous amount of bank accounts through them. I'm not even going to tell you the number. And I have lots of personal accounts. I have lots of like HSA accounts. I have money market accounts. I have savings accounts. And then I have lots of business accounts, and I have, multiple businesses. I'm also an attorney. So we have a law firm, and the law firm has an operating account and a trust account and all of these things that I'm legally obligated to do as an attorney. So the amount of accounts I have is a lot, and I, for convenience purposes, have them all under like one online access. That was mistake number one, but it hadn't been a mistake for years, you guys, for years. And so I log into my account that has all of mine, and I noticed on one of our operating accounts that there was like a significant amount missing, just right off the bat, where it says what your balance is. And so I just clicked on it, and I started scrolling, and it was immediate. It was so immediate. I saw this transaction for, I'm going to tell you the number, $24,500. Like, what? I saw the biggest transaction ever, and it was gone. Like, it was out of my bank account. Someone had wire transferred it to themselves. It was just ridiculous. Like, we had seen that there was, when you're like verifying your business bank account, and I scrolled a little bit down when I'm checking my account, and I see that there is a transfer in of like, 13 cents and 11 cents or whatever, and then a transfer out of that 24 cents. Like, like when you're hooking your bank account up to Venmo or up to QuickBooks or things like that, like you have to verify your account. So I was like, oh shiz. Like, someone literally has access to my online banking information, because you can't get those numbers unless you've logged in. That's where my bank started really freaking out, that they had access to my online banking. But step one is I saw this massive transaction. That is not something that you just take lightly. I mean, I stopped everything I did and called the bank immediately. And thankfully, I had checked my bank account the day after it happened. I'm going to talk about that and tips on what to do. But let me continue on with this story, because I'm sure you're thinking, oh, Paige, you should have done this. Paige, you should have done that. But like I said, this has never happened to me before. And I've had like weird transactions with my debit cards or my credit cards, but I've never had something like this from my bank account. And so we, the bank starts asking me all these questions. I have to go in and sign a document. I mean, they can DocuSign it as well, but my bank was literally right around the corner in downtown where I work. So I go down there and I sign for this like fraudulent transaction. And they had mentioned to me, like, we're really glad that you caught this right away. I caught it on a Friday. The transaction had happened on a Thursday. And they said, usually these things take about 3 days to process, and you caught it in the middle, something like this large of a wire transfer, you caught it before it had like finalized. And so it was a lot easier to get back. I do want to let everyone know I did get the money back. Thank goodness. But it's like all weekend I was freaked out. We didn't get the money back until the following week. I had payroll running. It was like just a hot freaking mess. And ultimately, I had the bank tell me, like, we're really concerned that one, someone either has access to your like computer on the back end because you have we had changed our, well, hold on. Let me go back. Sorry, I didn't write out an outline surrounding the whole situation of what went down. So I tell them about the fraud. We handle that massive transaction on my business bank account. This was an operating account. So we had finances in there for running taxes. I had transferred money in because we had January taxes. We had a lot of things happen at the end of the year, expense-wise, that we do for retirement purposes and just to like put money in different places. But I did have a lot of money in that account that I usually don't have for various reasons. And I just hadn't gotten around to like transferring it out. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in this episode. So I was kicking myself that I had plenty of money in my account for this amount. However, like we run payroll and we probably have payroll of like $35,000 every month. I'm just being like very frank with you all here. Like I run a business where we have employees and we have contractors and we have like a lot of money going out at the end of every month, like on, and then into, the first 3 days of of every month. So that's why I have this much money in there. And so it didn't get flagged as like, you don't have enough money in your account kind of thing. So it was kind of a legitimate transaction from my bank's, first glance at it. They didn't flag it as fraud. Also, I want to reiterate here, we have paid contractors in advance. I have paid for like big business expenses in advance from my bank account. And I have done it through kind of ACH transfers. And so again, to my bank, this didn't seem too out of the norm of me. I don't do it all the time, but I have sent like large sums of money for various business expense purposes. So my bank informed me that especially with wire transactions like this, you can't set limits. I would love to know if there's banks out there that you can set limits on these, but we have limits on like payroll that can come out. We have limits on how much our debit card can be charged every single month. Those are all things you absolutely want to do, but I had all these questions to the bank, like, why the heck would this go out without me knowing about it? And those were their reasonings behind it. So that was bank account number one. So the following week, like I'm still freaked out. We hadn't got the money back. My bank account gets restricted, so no one can go in and out of it. I had to open a new operating account because the bank was like not okay with me keeping that account. They said someone either had access to my online account, which we changed the password to, and then someone had access to my bank account numbers, which is very, very, very common. I'm going to talk about that later in the episode too, but your bank account numbers are like listed at the bottom of checks. And if you are like paying through ACH transfer, your bank account number and your routing number are like very easy to find for people. So it's not uncommon that people wouldn't just have my bank account number. They just thought it was strange with that like verification prior to the wire transfer situation that went down. So I opened a new operating account. The other account was restricted. So I have like the fraud protection side of my bank calling me every single morning, like verifying transactions. We have payroll going out that week, which means I have taxes in multiple states going out that week. So we had a lot to pay and I couldn't just close the account altogether. I had to restrict it. And they've just been like yes and no okaying different expenses going out of my account. So then, I think like Tuesday or Wednesday of that week, I am logging in and the bank itself has been wonderful. I want to give kudos where kudos are due. I'm not going to say the bank because that would be bad for me to do publicly, especially with all this that went down. But the bank itself was really wonderful. I cannot give enough like kudos to a personal kind of credit union, like small city credit union. I just think they're easier to deal with than big banks, to be very frank with you. I have banked with them since I opened a checking account when I was like 11 with my mom or 12 with my mom. So yeah, they've been a phenomenal bank for me over the many, many years that I've been with them. Jesus, like 2 decades, I'm dating myself. But then on Tuesday or Wednesday of the following week, I was checking my online account. Their like online banking department were in the process of switching up all of my accounts to start putting them into different online logins because I didn't have that previously. And for convenience purposes, they allow you to put them all together. They don't recommend it anymore, and they don't really recommend it ever when you open a business bank account. So that was another mistake of mine. But when I logged in, I saw another business operating account had been compromised, and there were 2 fraudulent transactions out of that one. They were quite a bit smaller, but it amounted to like $1,500 total. So now I have 2 bank accounts that are compromised, and now the bank is really freaking out because we had changed my online password and my online logins and all of that. We had set up 2-factor authentication. And so the bank was really thinking that someone was a hacker had either had access to my computer and I needed to scan for malware, or it was on my phone because, of course, they ask you the questions like, did you get some weird text? Did you click on any links? Yada, yada. I hadn't done anything. I was actually out of town for 3 days visiting a friend in a different place. So I didn't even check my accounts. I barely checked my phone. I was busy with a friend and I hadn't seen her in over a year. And so it was really important for me to like be present with that person. So when the bank was asking me this stuff, I was like, no, nothing has happened. And I am so diligent and aware as a person and a business owner that I'm not just going to like randomly click on something. Unfortunately, this does happen to people of different generations. For example, my grandfather had this happen to him in his early 80s, just because they don't know, like it is not commonplace for them to have text messages sent to them or emails sent to them. Like they're just kind of new to this whole online situation. And so they are way more likely to have wire fraud or bank fraud happen to them. But for me, I could not think of what I did that made this happen. And so the bank was also kind of racking their brains on, okay, what was going down? So then I had to send all of my computers in to scan for malware because the bank wanted me to get that done and then to send them like the results so they could put it in, kind of their case report on this situation, because it was very, very strange that it was all happening on 2 different accounts. So then we restrict that account. I have to open a new account for that one. And luckily we think that that's it. So then I, with the online banking department, we separated basically 4 of my businesses and my personal accounts to have their own online logins. Everything is separate. We have new bank accounts for everything. So new numbers. And then you can imagine the aftermath with a business owner like myself, the amount of credit cards or debit cards I needed to change because all of my debit cards got hot carded. So we had all new debit cards, all new online banking that I needed to get done through all of my online platforms. That's what happened. It was a mess. It was a mess. I think it's over. I'm not going to lie. Like I'm recording this in the middle of February and it's it's still weird. Like I'm sick to my stomach even just thinking about what went down and what could happen. Luckily, all of the accounts that we think that they had access to are now gone, and you can't, get into them without the bank's approval. And the bank has been really wonderful working through this with me. So they're aware of all of the accounts that were on my personal login, and they've been checking all of them like I have. And the bank even said last week when I spoke with them, because they call me every morning about transactions under restricted accounts because we're trying to get it transferred over, but it takes time. They were saying we had already declined 2 more fraudulent transactions this week. And I was like, cool. So I want to reiterate that getting into fraud like this is sticky, it's messy, and it's horrible. Like I don't want this for anyone. But hopefully as a person and a business owner, you never find yourself experiencing this. I am just now of the opinion that it's not kind of when it's going, or if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. So my mission throughout this episode is to help you feel equipped to not let this happen to you, and also shed some light on how you can legally protect yourself and separate your LLC accordingly, keep your assets separate, and do certain things with your bank account. Now it's time for me to put on my business blazer with you all and share my tips on how you can protect yourself from bank fraud in the first place. So these tips are just general business advice from yours truly regarding bank accounts and all of the things that I've learned in my, professionalism in this situation that went down. So tip number 1, generally speaking, try and use a card to pay for all of your business expenses. A credit card is actually best because it's not tied to your bank account. And I was always one of those anti-credit card people. And now I'm for sure getting a business credit card because credit cards are easier to flag fraudulent transactions, and it's actually just on your credit card, and it has nothing to do with coming in and out of your account yet. So it can happen through your credit card company, and you wouldn't even have to pay that amount because it's just on your credit card. So those I have heard are a lot easier to deal with. But if you don't have a business credit card or you don't like them, a debit card is okay as kind of the second best option, because you can hot card it and cancel it immediately. And you can also set restrictions on the maximum amount that a debit card can be charged. So that's really good. That's good news. However, of course, the reality is that if you're an online business owner like me, you probably have 983 million online platforms tied to your card for it to auto pay, say monthly or, biannually or annually. So that's the annoyance when things like this happen, because if your card gets hot carded, whether that's your credit card or your debit card, you have to go online and change your card for every single thing. But my big suggestion for you here is to stop paying by check for things, and to also try your hardest to avoid paying using your bank account number or by ACH transfer. I know some of you are going to be like, are you kidding me, Paige? Because 1, then you don't get fees taken out. And 2, lots of contractors like direct deposit or ACH transfer, or people send QuickBooks invoices all the time. Or you like to pay for check. I don't know. Maybe you're just old school and you like paying for check. But the bank in particular was like, yeah, that's why people don't use checks that much anymore, because your bank account and your routing number is at the bottom of every check. So anyone who gets a glimpse of that check is going to have your most valued numbers and information. So try to avoid check. And honestly, it's interesting because I've had lots of thoughts about this over the past few weeks. Europe and a lot of the rest of the world loves ACH transfers. However, I wonder how much they deal with this, to be honest with you. I would love to talk to a banker in France or something like that. And I would suggest that honestly, just best practice is to avoid using your bank account number to pay for things in ACH transfers. Like, don't use unreputable platforms. Use reputable platforms that you know have bomb-ass cybersecurity on the back end and are well-known. They have lots and lots of fraud protection. So that's what the bank told me. Like if it's Target or if it's Target has definitely had hackers. I digress there. If it's like QuickBooks or PayPal, they were telling me like a lot of those businesses don't have this happen as much, and they are prepared for it to occur and can help you out through the process. So just try avoid using your bank account number if at all possible. Use a debit card or a credit card. Tip number 2, if you are using the same bank for personal and business purposes, get 2 different logins for your accounts. And I'm just generally speaking here, say you have a personal checking account and you have a business checking account. Like, we're going to dumb this down, 2 accounts. And say your bank links those to your one online login. Don't do that anymore. I know it's annoying and it's inconvenient, but get multiple logins, one for your business account and one for your personal account. So if something were to happen, especially with login reasons, then you have at least some barrier and protection between the bank account that didn't get that fraud on top of, that didn't have the fraud happen to it. Tip number 3, stop storing your passwords on Google Chrome or any other type of auto password generator. This is one of the easiest ways actually for hackers to get access to your online accounts. And I had people that are in cybersecurity that I was talking to throughout the duration of this, horrible bank fraud situation that happened to me. And bankers also suggested this as well. They just said like, Google is Google. And of course they have phenomenal security, but auto-generating passwords is one of the easiest ways if someone gets into your computer for them to take whatever password that they want, because it's auto-generating and they can like code those, or they can get into your keyboard and know what you're typing. So just try to take really, really important passwords off of Google Chrome or an auto password generator. I use Google Chrome because we have Google Suites and Google accounts for our businesses. All right, tip number 4, check your bank accounts daily, if not every other day. So that's what the bank suggested. They were kind of patting me on the back that at least I figured this out the following day during like a 3-day kind of wire fraud transaction situation. It was a lot better for them to deal with in the middle of that 3 days than afterward. It's harder for them to get the money back. It would be harder for them to track the money as well, and harder for the other bank that it went into to track the money. So just check your bank accounts daily, because if fraud were to occur, you want to report it as soon as possible. All right. Tip number 5 is if you save passwords anywhere for all of your online logins, especially your bank accounts, save them in a highly encrypted 2-factor authentication password security program. Now, I'm going to be very, very honest with you here. We actually moved from LastPass to a different platform. I'm not even going to say what it is because of this issue. LastPass got hacked. If you don't know that, now you do. If you use the LastPass, I would suggest you change it. Even when I went in to the computer store to scan for malware on all of my computers, like my laptops and my desktops, I was told by the person, like, you don't use LastPass, do you? Because this just happened to like another person that came in, and they're pretty darn sure that it came from somebody hacking onto LastPass. So sorry to like rag on LastPass, but I'm just being honest with you here. Like, it's not just me, it's with other people have told me they are moving away from LastPass as well. If you guys are listening to this episode and you need suggestions on other kind of password security programs online, just reach out to me, and I have someone in the industry that has a really good list of different ones that they can give you. Okay, and then the next thing in this specific like saving passwords suggestion here is, again, I've been talking with cybersecurity gurus about what happened in cybersecurity techs. And they even said like keeping a Rolodex or a little notepad of your passwords is oftentimes less of a security risk right now than keeping them in an online platform. I was like, phew. I always thought like, oh, we don't want to keep like a Rolodex or just, I always told my parents or like my grandpa, like, what are you doing? But nowadays, the chances are likely lower that someone will break into your home and find your little notepad with your passwords than a hacker getting into an online platform. Like we see hackers getting in almost on the weekly on the news or in our emails that there's a security breach that occurred. Hackers are getting more and more and more sophisticated, and they're only going to continue to get more sophisticated. So it's really something we all need to be better about. I'm just going to say that it's probably like not the best practice, but I'm kind of the opinion now that like somehow I got hacked and nobody like found it on a notepad in my house. They found it through an online platform. All right. Now that we've gone through my general advice on how to best avoid this situation, if at all possible, I also want to share my top 3 pieces of legal advice. I want to really explain to you why you need to separate your business into its own business entity. Usually that's a limited liability company, also known as an LLC. And let me explain what that means. So when you own a limited liability company, your business by definition limits your personal liability. So it protects your personal assets in the case of a lawsuit or a fraudulent transaction such as this. This protection is frequently referred to as the LLC's corporate veil. And if you've ever heard me explain this before, it's like a bubble. The LLC bubble is surrounding your business assets. That includes your business bank account in there where all of your cha-ching moments, your income and expenses come in and out of. So as a business owner, you want to do everything you can to make sure that your corporate veil remains intact. What that means is you have to have a separate business bank account. You cannot commingle funds from your personal to your business account. And you absolutely have, if something were to happen just randomly, you mistakenly made a business transaction on your personal debit card, say, you have to reconcile those transactions regularly when you run your bookkeeping, which is usually monthly. So you have to make sure your corporate veil remains intact with a business bank account. If you are a sole proprietor and you do not have a separate bank account for your business, get one now. It doesn't have to be tied to your LLC, but just please start there. If you are also a sole proprietor and you haven't thought about becoming an LLC, like please do. If anything, listen to this episode and do that because that is the best insurance you can get for your business. Like get your personal assets out of this situation. Now, the problem with my thing that went down is I do have a personal checking account that was on my online banking that was, well, we don't know now. We are of the assumption, I literally still don't know what actually happened to me and the bank doesn't either, and that's what really sucks. But we don't think it was our online login. But they said there is a potential, and it has happened before, that someone's online login got hacked. Meaning my personal account, if that were to have been what happened to me, my personal account was at risk. So please, if you have and you form a compliant LLC and you register it through your state, when you get your LLC bank account, make sure that online login is separate from your personal bank account's login. So under this whole LLC situation here, legally, I also want you to acquire insurance for your LLC, not just general liability insurance, which covers you for negligent situations and damage and injuries that could occur, but look into getting cybersecurity insurance. I'm kind of like, I'm not a risky business owner, but I'm not like a non-risky business owner. I'm like middle ground, right? I like to think of it like, I don't know, the squirrel like parachuting off mountains. Like I would probably skydive with a tandem professional that has done it over 1,000 times. Like that's my risk meter. I would definitely skydive, but I'm not going to like squirrel jump off a mountain. Like that's like a super risky type of business owner if we're using metaphors here. And then there's the people who are just like, absolutely not. I'm staying, my feet are on the ground. I will not be in the air. No way am I going to have that risk upon myself. So those are like my 3 different categories here of like very, 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 very low risk, risky people. And then there's like super high risk, like just base jumpers. Okay. Cybersecurity, I would say, is somewhere in the middle. So cybersecurity insurance is one of those like umbrella insurances or additional riders to your CGL policies and CGL is commercial general liability. Sorry. I know I worked for insurance defense in the legal world for a while. So I know quite a bit about insurance, and oftentimes business owners decline cybersecurity insurance. And now I'm here to tell you, check the box. Get the cybersecurity insurance. If it's $40 extra a year, it's like the best $40 you're ever going to spend if you have a $20,000 fraudulent transaction on your bank account. So get the cybersecurity insurance. And if you're someone who doesn't like the Rolodex, like notepad type of thing, and also you just like don't agree with that type of practice, and you do use, two-factor authentication, like online password security platforms, then cybersecurity insurance is also very, very, very good for you to get because you have all of your passwords somewhere in the cyber world. Now, the last thing I wanted to say is in regards to legally setting up your LLC the correct way. People are always talking about how to sufficiently capitalize your LLC, but I don't want you to put too much capital into your LLC. I want you to put it into different accounts. I had a post recently on Instagram where I talked about like paying yourself as a single member LLC. And I really discussed the differences in bank accounts that you need. You need an operating account, you need a tax account, you need a savings account, yada, yada. If you have read or have audiobooked Profit First, then you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, go read Profit First after this episode. Please do. But overcapitalizing an operating account can get you into a sticky situation like I did. And there was really no way to avoid how much capital I needed in that bank account at that specific time of the year. But what I wish I would have done is not just keep it in there sitting until a lot of these big expenses hit that I knew were coming. I wish I would have put it into a separate money market account or a high yield savings account that I had with my investment company, and then transferred it the 24 hours before those big expenses were supposed to hit. I know it's inconvenient and it can be oftentimes more cumbersome to do it that way. But that little bit of time, like that 5 minutes that I would have spent like logging into my investment accounts and setting up the transfer and making sure that it worked, or just calling my financial advisor and having that person just transfer the funds because they have access to my accounts. I wish I would have done that because one, you make, of course, more interest on investment accounts and high yield saving and money market accounts, but your capital you want and your profits, your business profits. And, if you have a tax spending account, you want your money, your business money, not all in one account. Because if wire fraud were to happen, you would want it to be way less than what I had happen. And then all of your other accounts aren't compromised as well, or all of the rest of your money isn't compromised as well because it's in different accounts. Let me clearly explain that. So that is what I would suggest. I also am of the opinion that it's way, 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 way better to get investment accounts and money market accounts through a different bank that is more of like a financial investment company, because those are honestly 10 times more secure than a business checking account with just a bank that you can set up online. All right. I have relived the craziness of the end of January with you all. I mean, what a way to really ring in the new year, am I right? I have also shared with you a ton of information on bank fraud, and I want to just recap here 3 big takeaways from this episode. And these are my 3 tips to hopefully help you prevent this type of thing, bank fraud-wise, from ever happening to you personally or your business. 1, get a separate bank account for your business funds and make sure that the online login is separate from your personal login, and check your bank account super regularly. 2, try to avoid paying with a check or bank account number whenever possible. Use a credit card, number 1 choice, debit card, number 2 choice. And number 3, get yourself an LLC right now. Set yourself up if you aren't already an LLC or a C corp. Some people like to be incorporated, but then you get double taxed. For lots of intensive purposes for everyone, the majority of people listening to this episode today, like 99% of you, I would suggest an LLC versus a C corp. And so get an LLC operating account that is your own business bank account, and then also have really good insurance for your business and look into getting cybersecurity insurance. Now, before we go, I want you to know that if this has ever happened to you or you find yourself in this situation, it's okay to be upset. It's okay to talk about it and share about it, especially in the midst of it all happening with your community. I really questioned whether I should talk about it online. And I honestly think people question me for doing it. But after sharing about it, especially on my Instagram account, that's where I share kind of like my daily happenings with everyone, I ended up getting tons of DMs and messages from people that were either in the cybersecurity world or the same thing had happened to them or a friend of theirs that they knew. And they were gleaning a lot of insight to me into what I needed to do and what to make sure that I set up so it didn't happen again. And people really just offered lots of good tips. I even had one amazing follower send me a coffee card to brighten my day because they could just tell I was in a lot of distress. So everyone in my community was really trying to cheer me up, and it meant so much to me. And I just wanted to say thank you to you all. Not only was it nice to kind of be like, oh, we're all in the same boat together. Like, we all have online banking, so this can happen to anyone. But it was nice to be able to verbalize what was going on to like industry professionals like myself and for us all to come together. So it's okay to talk about it. I think it's worthwhile to talk about. And I think a lot of people can gain a lot of education by talking about things like this. Alas, if I can have a little peace knowing that by sharing about this situation, I can help one of you going through it too, then that really means everything to me. That is all that I have for you today in today's episode. Of course, if you have any questions or you need any additional resources, you guys know where to find me. You can find me at The Legal Page on Instagram. You can email us on our website, and you can also join our Facebook community. That's all, my friends. Have a good one.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Legal Page podcast. See, I told you being legally legit isn't so scary. Be sure to visit thelegalpage.com for all show notes. And it would be super awesome if you could head over to iTunes and leave a review. Last but not least, don't forget to join my free Facebook group for unlimited legal and biz Q&A. Chat soon, Legal Pagers.